Hey, Deb, can you hear me?
Hey Sam, it's Ed. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, thanks. So is there another sign-in for the executive session or no?
Yes, there is. You should have received it. I'll send it back.
Yeah, I didn't get that one. If you could send that, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty.
You should have it now, Ed.
That's the ticket. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex, what are you up to, buddy? You got your mic on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Alex. You know what? Tomorrow I'm going to send you a bunch of videos. I went to a guy's house over on 3rd Avenue in the Mount Pleasant section of the city by the
Yeah.
Fair House. There's a whole alley there, Alex, that is just in disarray. I guess they had a fire there last week. The fire chief was down there. It's just amazing the garbage that's there. Can I send you directly the photos, or do I got to go through the online
Yeah,
thing, or what do you want me to do?
You can send it to me. That
I'll-
works.
If you don't mind, all right? That was certainly
Is it debris
appreciated.
from?
I saw Ryan's name on the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, I was gonna announce it as we just started.
You guys hear me? Okay, yeah. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
We're waiting for Carmel, yes?
She must be chasing her dogs.
I like it, huh?
Anthony, you're not muted, just so you know. Oh, now you are.
Carmel's having some technical difficulty. She should be on in a minute.
Miss Patrick, are you okay now?
Yes, that was immensely frustrating.
Wait till you got to go to executive session now.
Yeah. Thank you. We'd like to call the Schenectady City Council Committee meeting for Monday, October the 19th, 2020 to order, and we'll go right into claims. Ms. Perazzo.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. I'll call claims to order. And we are going right into executive session because we have outside counsel with us. And so we will take our 3 items of executive session at the top of the agenda. And all the council members will be asked to sign off of this link and sign on to the executive committee link. And then we will return to this link after the executive session is over. So I will ask for a motion to go into executive session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So if everyone can sign off and sign into the executive session link. believe everyone's here. Correct, Mr. Mutivaran? When you give me the go-ahead, I will move forward. Mr. Mutivaran?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we'll have Ms. Porterfield open up government operations.
I'm sorry, but we're still in claims right now.
You're starting claims? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. All we did was come out of executive session, and I would like to, before we close out claims, I would like to publicly ask the mayor. You know, tonight in claims, we had two accidents with city vehicles. One of them is the driver's unknown, and it's unknown if the driver was drug tested, and nobody has any answers, and nobody knows if there was any, coaching or any disciplinary action taken. And as the top manager of the city, I'm asking the mayor to bring forward some answers on this. We have policies that state that there was no police report of the accident at the time. So we have policies that state that the police must be called and there must be a police report. We have policies that state if a city driver is in an accident, they're drug tested. And it's not just tonight, it's time after time after time that this is mismanaged and just poorly attended to. And I'm asking the mayor publicly to please have the follow through with the department heads to make sure that proper processes are being followed. Because at the end of the day, it's our taxpayers that pay for these claims, not the mayor, not the council, but actually the taxpayers. So we owe it to them to manage the city properly and to make sure that the policies are being adhered to. So I will ask the mayor publicly and Mr. Colden to, first of all, get us the name of this driver before Monday and find out whether the driver was drug tested or not. But we must do better going forward. This is a bunch of poor excuses, time after time after time, and over 9 years on this council that I've heard this. And it's got to stop. The number one job is to manage the city, manage the city. Does anyone else have anything to come before claims?
Nope, motion to adjourn?
Ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Porterfield. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, call to order government operations. There's 3 items on the agenda. The first item is retention disposal schedule for New York State local government records. Assistant Chief Sieber, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right. I'll get started if that's okay. Before you have your legislative request, it's kind of self-explanatory, but I'll go into a little bit. There's they took the MU1 report, which is retention and disposition of schedule for basically any records, not only in the police department, but throughout the city and local governments and itself. And they consolidated a bunch of guidelines that the state had. And there's a requirement between now and January 1st that legislation be approved to accept this new retention, local government records retention law, which is, they call it LGS 1. And what happens is they really kind of helped us in a way to simplify it, at least for law enforcement. When we used to have to hunt to see how long we had to retain a record, lots of times it was hard to find, quite frankly. And now they kind of simplified it, and so we find it much more user-friendly. We have started using it. It's not really much different as far as records retention under the MU1, as far as length of period of time that we have to retain things. But they got more technical as far as electronic records and stuff, was very helpful for us. So we asked the council to move it. Again, this is not a police-only item, it's a city item, but we kind of deal with it probably as much as anybody, if not more, with our records retention in the police department. So we put it on the agenda to get it moving before the first year, obviously. So any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Are there any questions from the council members? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Assistant Chief Sieber.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of backyard chickens. Ms. Patrick and Mr. Mudavaren.
Thank you, Ms. Porterfield. We're going to ask for this item to be put on hold and put back in committee in 2 weeks. Ms. Patrick and I have some more information that we didn't get a chance to share with the other council member. So we'll ask for you to hold and put it back in committee in 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll bring it back in 2 weeks. Thank you. And the third item on the agenda is discussion to call for a public hearing amending City Code Chapter 87-45. Ms. Perazo.
Yes, hello. As we found out in our budget meeting, the raises for the chief and the assistant chief are commensurate with the bargaining unit, and the city code states that they are adjusted in accordance to the highest ranking officer. And for the council to change this, we need to, although it read legislation, but Corporation Council says we need to pass an ordinance to amend this. As you can well imagine, in this cash-strapped budget experience, having a 9% raise for our chief is of great concern to me. It has nothing to do with my confidence in the chief, my confidence in assistant chiefs, or the police department. This is purely monetary in a time that we are squeezing every penny, and we have the potential to have many, many people lose their jobs. And so to ask Corporation Council is, with this abbreviated time of having to pass the budget at the end of October, how can we add a special meeting or some sort of circumstance to the process so that we can, in a timely manner, call for a public hearing and create this ordinance?
Well, you can certainly, call for have a special meeting. Obviously, if you're looking to change 8745, there has to be a public hearing. So I would assume, looking at the calendar, Ms. Perazo, in terms of when you would want to do everything, you do a call for a public hearing at the next council meeting, which would be obviously the 26th. You'd have to obviously provide enough notice meeting for people to submit comments, and obviously you'd have to draft the language that you're looking for in terms of modifying 8745, and then based on providing enough time for people to respond. I assume you would not use the same schedule that that we're currently moving on. You're looking to do it on a special day outside of what's already announced. Again, it's just providing what would be deemed a reasonable amount of time.
And can I ask the clerk how long we have, what the time window is of alerting people to the public hearing?
Samantha, are you there?
Okay, so on Monday, if this passes tonight, we'd be calling for a public hearing. Immediately, it's sent out to the newspaper, but then that means the next council meeting is when the public hearing does actually happen. And then it has to wait to the cycle after that to be passed.
Mm.
Well, I don't think it has to wait until the cycle after that. I think that's been our good practice, to not vote on the item on the same night as the public hearing. But I legally think that we can, in fact, vote on that item at the same meeting as the public hearing.
Yeah, you can. I think you can do that as well. After the public hearing, you can, based on submissions and any statements given in consideration of that, you can either move ahead with what you would prescribe in the draft language, or perhaps modify it based on the comments provided. There's also a section in our code 28-3 related to special meetings with notice requirements in there. So if for some reason you didn't do it at the same day as the public hearing, you could potentially have a special meeting. It has to be on 3 days' notice, specifying the purpose of the meeting. Obviously, it would have to be published.
So if we called actually for a special meeting on Wednesday to pass the call for the public hearing, then we could have the public hearing on the 26th and pass the change in legislation at that time, yeah?
I'm sorry, Ms. Cross, I'm trying to follow the calendar in terms of what you're saying. So on the 26th, you would do the call for the public hearing.
No. If we had a special council meeting on Wednesday,
The 21st?
and we called for a public hearing on the 26th, that gives the 3 days notice. And we could, so we could pass the call for the public hearing out of a special meeting midweek and then have 3 days notice that the public hearing would happen on the 26th.
Well, if you did it on the 21st, had a special meeting on the 21st for this purpose, you still have to do 3 days notice for the public, the special meeting. So if today you said you want to do a special meeting on the 21st, that wouldn't be 3 days notice. You'd have to provide the 3 days notice for the special
Okay,
meeting.
so the 3 days notice would bring us to the 22nd, and then we could have another special meeting that following Tuesday just for that item, yes?
I believe that would be 3 days notice. I think part of it is also the city clerk obviously is going to have to do publication on this. I don't know if, because today's already, today's the 19th, it's relatively short for the purposes of providing advance notice. I don't know if it could be published tomorrow, for the purposes of a meeting on the 22nd.
Okay, well, we'll work it out with the clerk and the council president, but we basically need 3 days of publicized notice that we're having a special meeting, and then 3 days publicized notice that we're having a public hearing with the language as needed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and as long as we have that happen along with the passing of the budget by October 30th, which is a Friday. So it seems like we have enough wiggle room in there. Okay, gathering some information and we'll discuss. And
Ms. Perazzo, can I ask a question?
This is my committee, but you may go ahead, Ms.
I'm sorry, Ms. Burgess.
No worries.
I just wanted some clarification on these raises. I believe that it is over a multi-year. It was not a 1 year, and I believe it is following a contract, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Correct?
No, it's not. Ms. Zaluski-Abuzulis, we asked that similar question at the last meeting, and the mayor said it's not a contract. It's part of the city code, which is why Ms. Perazzo was bringing forward amending that particular city code, that particular chapter of the city code, 8745.
But it's driven by the settlement of the PBA contract if you're referring to the police chief and the assistant chiefs.
Yes, Ms. Perazzo.
yes, we understand that. So it would be amending that part of the code that it would not follow that it was discretion of the council to be able to approve the raise or not.
And can I ask Councilor Perazzo, what are you looking to do? To take the pay raise away, to modify it in some manner, or how are you looking to change the overall policy?
Well, it's not me who's looking to do it. It's the consensus of the council, and we have not had that discussion yet. But I know that more than just myself personally, people have certainly expressed concern with a 9% raise on a year that we're laying off a whole bunch of people. And next year will likely be a very different year for us. But this year we have to look at everything we can possibly look at. And so if there's consensus from the council, we would decide where we wanted to go with it from there. This is fact finding for me to then go about doing my business from here. And again, it's not what I'm looking to do, it's the consensus of the council.
Ms. Porterfield? Ms.
Ms. Patrick, yes, Ms. Patrick.
I need more information before I could move this out of committee. Because again, it was my understanding from last week, I thought that this was something that already had been agreed upon for the chief with the council last year.
No.
I thought that this was part of a contractual agreement.
Ms. Porterfield?
No. Yes, Ms. Peraza.
This legislation dates back to Frank Ducey being mayor. That's how old this legislation is in the code. And these are unprecedented times. And I will ask you, Ms. Patrick, to vote it out of committee if you choose not to vote for it as we go forward, but we're on a tight timeline here. And if the consensus of the council is not to change it, then it's not to change it. We won't have the votes. But I think it's only fair that you let the process be the process and not decide singly that you're going to decide what the consensus of the council wants to do.
Porterfield.
Yes, I am not sure who that is, but go ahead.
It's John Palomeni.
Okay.
My understanding of this is that this goes back 3 or 4 years with the contract. It's not really a 9% raise, it's 2% per year, and that's where we come up with the 9%. To me, this isn't something that was in place. It's part of an agreement. If you're going to do this, try to change this, then basically do the contracts hold up. If I'm a city worker, I would be very concerned about things like this, because why would we have agreements in place? I understand we're having tough times, but had this contract been settled last year, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. So I think we have an agreement in place with a employee, well, actually a set of employees, and we should really abide by that.
So, Mr. Palomeni, yes, Mr. Mudavaren?
Thank you.
So, yeah, but let me just, I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yes. Mr. Palomeni, I understand what you're saying about having well, it's not a contract. As the mayor clearly stated, this is part of the city code. And so even if this doesn't impact this particular budget, it could impact budgets going forward. And I definitely think that it's something we should take a look at. Or do we simply ask, since it's 3 years and this year we're having a very tough year, do we simply ask those that this is affecting to say, hey, could you forego your raise for that one season, that one time? We could ask that question, given the financial situation we're in.
The other side of the argument that we're forgetting is that one of the reasons this was put in place, this agreement, is because there's been sweetheart deals to certain individual administrators in the past, and this was put into place to try to avoid that so that it's based off a contract. And I never said it was the contract with the chief or the assistant chiefs. It's based off the PBA contract, and we have an agreement in place through this legislation or ordinance, whatever you want to call it. And that's what I'm referring to.
No. Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we need to discuss this further. And I don't know about you, but when Frank Ducey put this in place, I'm not sure what his idea was, and we can't ask him. Mr. Mudavaren, you want to make a point?
Yes, just want to
I'm sorry.
Echo the same sentiment from some of my colleagues. We had an agreement, the contract agreement with the PBA, and I think, we should respect that. Going forward, we can look at ways how we can able to address these as we go into next contract. But it's clearly defined in the charter that we have to respect those being there forever. In terms of Peraza moving forward with the budget, my intention is to have a vote on the budget next Monday. If the majority of the council feel that we should not have a vote on next Monday. I will respect that. But my intention is to move forward with a vote on that date, unless there is a majority that feel otherwise, and I will respect that. But I think that at this point in time, you know what, the contract was awarded. These raises are not 1 year raise. They are over multiple years. And I think that is something that we as a council should look at more deeply as we move forward. But at this point in time, I'm comfortable. And as Ms. Porterfield mentioned, we can reach out to these individuals and ask them, these are tough times. Can these raises be forego? Well, those are things that we need to do as a collective group. Thank you.
Mayor, you wanted to say something? Mayor?
Just thank you. Again, this modification was not done by Frank Ducey. It was done after his term, and it took the salaries of the command staff, both in the police and fire department, and put everything really out on the table, where there used to be big payouts that would accumulate at the end, and it leveled the salary so that everybody knows what they're getting paid. Police and fire are expensive personnel. They're highly trained. They deal with difficult situations. These numbers, yes, they're high, but they're reflective of what the field for their training and experience is. And it also, I will tell you, I'll match the command staff of the police department, the fire department, against any other department pretty much in the state of New York. You should be proud of the work they're doing. And yes, I know the numbers are big, but it is an adequate and fair method by which they're being compensated. And I would ask the council to leave that in place, what I've recommended in the budget.
Ms. Porterfield.
Yes, Ms. Peraza.
First of all, let's be clear. The first thing I said was this has nothing to do with the quality of our police department or our personnel. Absolutely not. My voting record shows I stand behind them 100%. So that's that being said. And as far as sweetheart deals go, I have seen more sweetheart deals to the tune of I believe a 34% raise for one personnel member over the course of this last, again, the 6, 8 years. So this has nothing to do with sweetheart deals, because we've seen plenty of sweetheart deals be put into the budget. And again, I am still deeply concerned when all of these people are going to lose their livelihood and we're giving these big chunk raises this year, just this year. That being said, that's my personal opinion. If there's not consensus to move forward, that's the beauty of democracy and government. But I want that to be public record that is what I was advocating for.
And so I think that it's worthwhile actually taking a look at this. And if the raise for the police chief and the command staff were not directly tied to the PBA contract, then we would be looking at this every year and not waiting for a 3-year accumulation where we're getting this huge impact on our budget. So we could look at it year by year, as opposed to with the PBA contracts seem to drag on forever. So if we change this legislation, then it's not no one saying they can't get raises. We would just look at it on a yearly basis, and they would not be tied to the PBA contracts. So I certainly think it's worth taking a look at. And as Ms. Peraza has said, it's no reflection whatsoever on the individuals who police our city, who are here to serve and protect. But we are looking at the numbers, and we're looking at how these things really work together. And I'm not sure I really fully understand why a police chief salary is directly tied to someone else's salary necessarily. I mean, I know that's what they came up with, but I'm not sure that it makes sense, because really how does that reflect on you really maybe wanting to give the chief more 1 year, or any other command staff? We may want to make their raise, and maybe we may want it higher at some point, but tying it to this keeps it a certain percentage regardless. So I really think it's worth taking a look at. And as Ms. Peraza said, it doesn't tie anyone to anything. It's simply us taking a look at it and seeing what makes sense. So is there any other comments or input on this? So in that case, Ms. Patrick, did you have something?
I just, as a process question, I'm really feeling that this is sounding rushed and I need more information. It sounds like we're trying to squeeze this in before we vote on the budget on Monday. And I mean, I definitely need to read more and to see the exact numbers and to look at the back numbers. I mean, so I'm probably going to vote no. I'm going to vote no to move it out of committee. I mean, we'll probably still get out of committee, but I need more information. I think it seems awfully rushed.
Based on what a couple of things that have been said. First of all, that Mr. Mudavaren is clear that he wants to make sure that the budget's passed on Monday. And even if we put a call for a public hearing to amend this, then it will go through this normal process that it goes through. So in short, what I'm saying to your comment is this will not impact this particular budget. It will impact the budgets going forward because it's been said that, that the budget we're currently in, Mr. Mudavaren's goal is to make sure that we vote on Monday. So we can't call for a public hearing and vote all at the same time. It just won't happen. In the terms of the time frame, it won't work. But if we call for a public hearing, it gives us that opportunity to take a look at it. So if your concern is that it's going to impact this current budget, that's not what would happen.
So it would, it's already been, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Patrick.
It would not impact what the chief has already been told he would be receiving.
That is correct. Because it would not impact this current budget. That is correct.
Well, couldn't we then, again, just because of trying to learn the process, but couldn't we push into more discussion in 2 weeks? If it's not going to have any impact on this budget that we want to discuss and vote on Monday, why would we be trying to have the discussion before Monday?
Well, that's not going to happen. Ms. Peraza was presenting the case of trying to making that happen within a time frame, so we get this done by the 30th. But Mr. Mudavaren's made it clear that that's not going to happen in terms of voting on the budget. He's made that clear. That does not prevent us from.
Ms. Porterfield?
Yes, Mr. Mudavaren.
Yeah, my intention is to have a vote on the budget on the 26th, but the majority of the council feel that we should hold it on another date before the 1st of November. I am okay with that. But that's what we want to schedule it on a regular committee meeting, but if the majority feel otherwise, I do not have an issue with that before the 1st of November.
Ms.
Okay.
Porterfield?
Yes, Ms. Peraza.
If we're not going to do this before the budget, I don't see why we have to call for a public hearing tonight. The whole idea is to protect our taxpayers and to protect our people that are going to lose their jobs and lose their livelihood completely. And if that's not going to happen, then I don't see why this has to be rushed. And that's just a function of whether the majority of the council feels that way. But I'm surprised.
Right. So I guess in that case, we'll poll the council. And if folks want to move ahead with this in the way that Ms. Peraza has described, or to vote on the budget on Monday, which is what Mr. Mudavaren is suggesting that happen. So, Mr. Kozier.
I'm not supportive of voting this. As Ms. Patrick said, I think we need more information, more detailed information on this whole process. And again, I'm fine with voting the budget on the 26th.
Okay. And Ms. Patrick?
I would vote for the budget on the 26th, so I think we have time to discuss this later.
Mr. Palamani?
Yeah, let's get the budget done and we can address this later if need be.
I'm sorry, I skipped over you, Ms. Peraza. Ms. Peraza.
I certainly think this is worth discussing before we pass the budget.
Okay. And Ms. Zalewski-Walzunas?
I would like to discuss the budget on the 26th. Thank you.
And Mr. Mudavaren?
Well, majority is in favor of the 26th, so I will go with that.
Okay. And for me, I would like to us to take the opportunity to, even though it seems like a very short expedited process, which this entire budget was kind of like short and expedited in terms of meetings, that we have an opportunity to take a look at it so it impacts this budget. But as has been said, we do not have the majority council on board for that. So, Ms. Perazzo, would you like us to just, we won't even try to move this out of committee? We won't even, okay. Okay, in that case, this will not move out of committee. We'll not even bring it to, we'll just take it off the agenda. And we will perhaps bring it back for discussion in 2 weeks. And so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn government operations.
So move.
Second. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, we're adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee. The first item on the agenda is the discussion of the 2021 budget. As we all know, the public hearing was on October 13th. We have our third budget meeting tomorrow evening at 5:30, where we will have, which committee's here? Let's see, the Finance Committee, not Finance Committee, the Finance Department, as well as Communications, Utilities, Data Processing Development. We will also be discussing the remainder of the capital budget, which I believe is largely the smart cities technology discussion. And we will have a meeting that was originally going to be on Wednesday, but due to the police reform scheduling on the same night as us, we're going to move that to Thursday at 5:30, and with the hopes of having something passed out of committee. All right, next on the agenda is the Rose Garden Restoration Committee with Mr. Ferrari.
Good evening, everyone. In October of this month, I was contacted by the Rose Garden Committee, Restoration Committee, and they were requesting the amount of revenue that they generated in Rose Garden in 2020. In the past years, we have reimbursed the committee for the amounts that was the amounts that we had the amounts that we had taken in and received during that year. In the year 2020, the city has received $2,350 as a result of events held at the Rose Garden. So the Rose Garden has submitted certain expenses that were incurred by the committee to maintain the water features and other parts of the garden in 2020. Those total expenses came to $2,613. And our recommendation is to give the Restoration Committee the $2,350 to make up for their $2,600 that they spent. Any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions? All right, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
On the agenda is the contract with the land bank for CDBG funded Barrett Street demolitions with Dan Gray.
Good evening, everybody. This is pretty self-explanatory. The Capital Region Land Bank put a bid out to do demolitions on 2 properties on Barrett Street that are city-owned, 1052 and 1062 Barrett Street. When the pricing came back, they requested that use some of our CDBG demolition funds to assist in doing those demolitions, and so we're requesting that you approve us entering a contract with the Capital Region Land Bank for $53,000 to utilize CDBG demolition funds.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So after these buildings are demolished, then they are the property of the land bank?
They would be the property of the city.
They would be the property of the city. So there's only, once we use CDBG funds to demolish any properties, aren't we limited in how and what can happen with those properties in terms of who can then who can purchase them?
Yes, generally speaking, this would have to be a low to moderate income benefit housing project. That would be probably the preferred disposition of it.
So what you're essentially saying is that when they demolish it, they're planning on building low to mod income housing on Barrett Street? Is that what you're saying?
That'd be, we don't have any plans to do that at this point in time, but that'd be probably what we would have to do.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure.
I was just going to ask if there was any other questions. All right, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call to order public safety. The first item is review of the guidelines, the bylaws for the Civilian Police Review Board with repeal of the 50A. Ms. Porterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mudavaren. So while we're right now in this whole process of doing police reform and reinvention and reimagination, we know that the Civilian Police Review Board is exactly that, the board that reviews complaints that come to the police department. So at this point in time, I know that the information that's given to that committee is heavily redacted. And so I'd like us to begin to take a look at the bylaws and actually a look at the legislation, which I did take a look at in the city code, and to make sure that we're adhering to everything. And a couple of things jumped out that we aren't doing in terms of the CPRB, and one of them that there's supposed to be an advisory committee that's above the CPRB. So as we're in this time now where we're doing all this, I think this is the perfect time to amend the bylaws if necessary, to make sure that we're adhering to the city code, and just to do a review of all of it, encompassed, and let it be encompassed with the police reform that's been being worked on by the city. So I'd like for that's under the purview of the city council, the CPRB. So I would like us to begin those discussions, review the bylaws and as well as the city code, to make sure that everything's in place, so that when we complete and submit our information to the governor, that everything is in place. We don't have any stone unturned or anything that we didn't look at in relation to our police department. So in the next public safety meeting, I'd like for us to take a look at that and then, begin those discussions.
Any discussion? So, Ms. Porterfield, you would like to have this back in committee next 2 weeks?
Absolutely, and I will get a copy of the bylaws. I wasn't able to find them, and but definitely, if necessary, we can ask the clerk to send it out to everyone. A copy of the code. It's clearly in the code, but I can send that link to everyone so we could take a look at the code and what we're currently doing. And just like I said, to make sure we're adhering to everything that's in the city code.
Mr. Mudavaren.
Go ahead.
I just had a question. I thought that this was part of the governor's, the task force. I thought they were looking into the civilian police review boards with part of the restructure of public safety within all of the cities. Is that not true?
That is not true. There's a document that the state put out called the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, and it talks about various things, including that. But it's not necessarily a part of what they're doing. It's a part of what we need to take a look at as part of our police reform.
I believe the chief was putting that on part of the agenda. So I believe that in the steering meetings, I thought we discussed this. So maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought the chief was looking into bringing this into the public hearings and getting feedback from the public. So
I've not heard that. So I've not heard that. And again, the CPRB comes under public safety for the city council.
Mr. Mudavaren, I guess. Mr. Mudavaren?
Yes, go ahead.
I actually was going to ask the same question because I thought that it was coming up for discussion with the Police Reform Task Force. I thought that it was on their agenda. I don't know when. But I totally see that it is the city council that needs to review everything, as Ms. Porter has said. But I do think it's part of the agenda for one of the task force meetings. I just remember them talking about it or when we got information at the beginning of that process. But I obviously see that we need to be the final decision making. Just thought that they were going to be giving us some recommendations.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Patrick. I thought the same thing.
Well, I think we should be giving recommendations, and as again, I'll say it again, it's part of our city code, so it's definitely up to the city council to look at the city code. So we should be looking at the city code as it relates to the Civilian Police Review Board.
I completely agree. I just didn't know around the timing whether we should also let the public have that chance to also tell us what they were thinking. I'm totally in agreement with you around the code piece, but I absolutely thought it was on the task force agenda.
I've not seen it, so if you could show me where. I've been on calls, I've not heard that.
Okay, I'll have to go back and look at the initial documentation that they sent us.
Okay.
Ms. Porterfield,
Mr. Mudavaren.
we have police chief online, and I'm not putting him on the spot, but would you like to address that if it's on the agenda, or it will be on the agenda that can help us with this item?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Chief.
No problem, Mr. President. I guess just for questions that were brought up. A review of the review board is a part of what we plan to do. I've been in contact with Dick Shave and Carl Williams, and we are, currently walking through some things that they would like to see. And, clearly anything that they would like to see and I would agree on would go to the council for approval. We've always known that. But it is a part of the discussion topic points that we plan to do during these conversations that will be presented to the council prior to April 1st.
Chief, so are you also going to be discussing the city code under that? Because I've been reviewing the book that's sent, and I see the piece about citizen oversight, but it does not talk about in terms of the city code, which is what directs the Civilian Police Review Board. And again, as I said, I did review this, and there are some parts of it that really the city council needs to take a look at, because there's some things that are not being done as part of it. I don't know if it's in the bylaws. I know that it's in the code. And I know that it's something that should be a part of it. And we should be taking a look at that to make sure that's brought forward. So again, my first question is looking at the city code part of that discussion, that legislation.
I have not been a part of it. It certainly can be brought a part of it. I've simply been talking to them as members of this review board, as the leadership of the board, to see what changes that they would like to see. I'm not going to speak for them to see if they've reviewed the city code or not, but I can tell you that as of right now, I have not. I've just made it a topic that we plan to discuss in the next upcoming weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mudavaren. But again, I'm going to say to my colleagues that as council members, it's up to us to be looking at the city code. And I think while we're doing this reform, we should take this opportunity to do that and not just leave that to folks who are not going to have any control of the city code, which is what I'm hearing.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Ms. Porterfield, would it be right that engage the police review boards, the leadership, in terms of what are they looking for in terms of changes and what we need in terms of helping each other to potential changes to this, what you're looking for?
I think that all council members first need to look at the code, but everyone seems to be a little bit resistant to that. But I think we should be doing our due diligence. I've been saying this about police reform from the beginning, and this is not about attacking the police department or anything. The governor put forth a mandate that all municipalities have to do this in order to get funding. It's plain and simple. So as we can hear, as we talk about the budget today, obviously funding is going to be an issue for going forth. So why we're resisting, because it seems like, I don't know, we're protecting or feel like people are being attacked. That's not what's going on here. Let's do our due diligence. Let's do everything that we need to do in terms of this police reform so that we can get the funding that we need. And while we're also doing that, making sure that all of our things are in place so that our citizens and our police department are feeling that they're all well respected and that as a community, we're getting better. That to me is the ultimate goal. Nothing besides that. So being resistant to look at something that we have here, I'm not sure why that is, and why we're saying that all of this should be put in the lap of our residents and our constituents. That's what I'm understanding, and why we're not taking a look at the city code. I'm not getting that, but that's, it's frustrating for me, but it seems that people are resistant.
Mr. Mudavar.
Mr. Mudavar.
Go ahead, please.
All right, so I don't believe that any of us are not looking to do any non-review of bylaws for the Civilian Police Review Board. I believe what we want to do is let the process that's happening right now happen, and let us, yes, let's all of us review the existing, review the guidelines and the bylaws, but let's not rush into this until we have an idea of what the community wants the review board to look like. Yes, I'm all about looking at this and reviewing it, but I would caution us making any kind of changes while this process is going in place. That's my only apprehension.
Mr. Mutavaran?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. We were elected to have oversight of the city code. And if we are going to entertain recommendations from the public, which are not to be experts on the city code, we need to know what the city code says. And we need to discuss where we think there are weak points. That's our job. And so I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Porterfield. It doesn't mean that we take the process, change the city code, don't listen to anybody, and move forward in the heck with all of you and your task force. But we're under a certain timeline. So for the council to not be aware of the caveats, the finer points of the city code prior to going into a conversation with the public who has a wish list versus a depth of knowledge in the code seems to me like the start of the process for the council. So I'm confused. It's our job. And then to take public, because we're public servants, to also take the public input and apply it. But if we don't know what we're applying it to, and we haven't already discussed it, it makes no sense.
Mr. Mutavaran?
Go ahead, Ms. Patrick.
Well, I think that's, at least what I was saying was, I definitely want to review the code. I understand that this is our responsibility. I wasn't saying that. It's just that because I knew it was part of the agenda for the police reform task force, I just want to make sure that, what's the word I'm looking for? That we're not, skewing in any way. I absolutely feel like we have to know what's in the code, review it, and discuss it. I just didn't want to step on the toes of the people in the public that are part of the police reform task force. I wonder if, so the chief indicated that he was meeting with Dick and Carl to discuss this. Maybe we could just make sure that all of our timing, kind of jives in terms of maybe where we all have to do our homework and discuss this, but also, do it in tandem maybe. So that we're not making decisions without that input from Carl and Dick, especially just because of their experience on the police review board. But
Mr. Mutavaran?
Go ahead, please.
So I'm not saying that that we're stepping on the toes of the public. That's not what we're talking about here. We're again talking about the city code. And as I said probably weeks and weeks ago, that we as a council should be some discussions. And I have been reading this manual that the governor put out. And on page 2, it says, I urge everyone to begin these discussions immediately. Restoring the relationship between the community and the police is in everyone's best interest, and conversation may be required to enable each stakeholder to understand others' point of view. And the last thing is, time is short. And he wrote this in August. And so time is even shorter now. So, you know, I would continue to advocate for us having these discussions. And I'm not sure, you know, why we don't have to have discussions separate and apart from, excuse me, we don't have to have discussions and say, here, take what we said, but we need to be having our discussions because the community groups are going to be having their discussions pretty soon. And the steering committee has already begun to have discussions. So why would we wait till it's all said and done to have our discussions? Why aren't we having discussions now? I don't understand that. And but I do feel a strong resistance to that. So, you know, we should be talking about this. And it may not happen, but I'm going to continue to say it. It needs to happen.
Any other comment from my colleague? Ms. Porterfield, you would like to have this back, or you want to, what is your pathway?
Yes, I will. And I'll send, and everybody, I think we should, the next time we come, we should at least talk about the Civilian Police Review Board, because as I said, there's one particular piece about an advisory committee, which is not happening right now, which clearly our legislation says we should have. So if we're not going to have it, if we don't want it there, we should have it. But we should be looking at it in the legislation. And I think pretty often, you know, that sometimes we have legislation in place and we've done it a certain way for so long, and we don't revisit that legislation. We forget some of the things that need to happen. So this is an opportune time, people, you know, with the review going on, all of this review going on, this is simply a part of it. We need to take a look at it. So yes, Mr. Mudavaren, I would love to see it come back and my colleagues be open to discussion.
So I'm going to ask our city clerk, Ms. Michael, to email the documents to the entire city council so that we have it before our next committee meeting. Any other discussion on this item? We'll move into the next item, a discussion sidewalk on Schenectady Street adjacent to Jerry Farrell Park. Ms. Porterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mudavaren. So several weeks ago, we discussed the fact that there was going to be new sidewalks put in around Jerry Burrell Park on, you know, the Schenectady Street side, of course, going across Hamilton, and then down part of Page Street. Within that discussion, we talked about beyond where the park ends, because the rest of the sidewalk really needs help, and extending it further. Within that discussion, it was said that some of that, one of the properties was owned by private persons. There was a city-owned property and then another private property, and then going on to property that's currently owned by the community builders, who we know are going to be laying sidewalks when they do put up their other buildings. We decided at that time that we would not go to private property and lay the sidewalks because it was private property. I personally visited people who lived in that property, presented them with the numbers that was given to me by the engineering department and what it would cost them to do it. They said they couldn't afford it. Last week, I was driving down Crane Street and noticing the work that's being done around Orchard Park, and saw that there's sidewalks being laid all the way to the corner in front of private property. So I would like us to revisit that and to be able to do that up until the community builder's property, because I don't understand why we differentiated that particular project from this one. And if we could, and since the sidewalk is broken and open, et cetera, that we'd be able to do that in front of those private properties, because we've done that with the Orchard Park project. So that's why I'm bringing this up for a discussion again.
Ms. Porterfield, were you able to talk with anybody from the administration, the mayor or Mr. Sutherland on this?
No, I only was able to talk with Yes, I'm sorry. I take it back. Of course, I spoke with Mr. Sutherland about that. I did. The mayor was out of the, he's been out of the office, so the mayor was not in the office. So I did talk to Mr. Sutherland about that. And he also called the engineer, who said that the reason that Orchard Park is what it is because that's what this council approved. And so the same thing with Jerry Burrell Park. So then it's within our purview as the council to approve going beyond what we originally did and move that further down to the end of the street and stopping at the property that TCB is going to be doing their project on. So this can come back to the council to amend what we originally did.
I see Mr. Wallen. I see Mr. Wallen here. Were you able to address some of those concerns from Ms. Porterfield? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot. Or Mr. Sutherland.
What is meant by address the concerns, I guess?
Well, in terms of the sidewalk on Crane Street versus the sidewalk on around Jerry Burrell Park and Schenectady Street, that was when the council discussed it in terms of like we can't do private properties. But on Crane Street, according to Ms. Porterfield, those are there. We do have some private properties that we have done sidewalk on. Can we address that?
Sure. Crane Street as presented was done from corner to corner as it was, once again, in relation to the Orchard Street side park project. And as I explained it, I view Crane Street as a main commercial and pedestrian corridor. And so it was in a state of disrepair. And it is what we're working on to try to up the Crane corridor. It's also part of Crane Street Business District that we work with and the Craig Main connector. So it's all one big loop in a way. So it was seen as more of a priority than other areas. And, we have to make decisions on where we invest the money and where we don't. I mean, in my opinion, it was a little bit more cut and dry than others, as it's not a primarily residential corridor. It's more of a commercial focus corridor. But it's the council. We've asked in the past to do areas with CDBG money in front of residences, and it's always come back that it's unfair to other residences. So we would prefer not to. So we have to make these tough decisions. I made the recommendations. I have the figures that we gave, and it's where we are. But by no means I can do whatever the council would like us to do. We can always do more. I just want to make sure that we're all communicating and working as a team.
Ms. Porterfield.
Yes. Yes. So I think that we should revisit it because what's going to happen, and it's going to end up looking like patchwork because we're going to do this part that ends at Jerry Burrell Park, and then the community builders is going to do a part that, their entire corner, and then onto Albany Street is part of it, I do believe, but definitely that corner. And then there's going to be this patch of sidewalk in between that looks like, I can't even begin to describe it, but it's going to be very torn up. So to me, I understand what Mr. Wallen's saying about CDBG, and certainly, we've had those conversations, but I think that some things are by a case-by-case basis. Everything's not cut and dry. It's not cookie cutter. And in this case, I think it would be worthwhile for us to consider doing that small piece of sidewalk while we have the sidewalk broken and open. And we know that in a few months that the community builders would also be doing their part of the sidewalk. So now we have a continuous sidewalk improvement. Are we going to come back later and do that through CDBG money? Why not do it now? I think it's a worthwhile investment.
A question to Mr. Wallen. Mr. Wallen, as the construction completed around Jerry Burrell Park, Schenectady Street, and as the contractor be moved?
I would say the project is about 60 to 70% complete. I can ask them if we have the availability to go in there, but as Ms. Porterfield said, if we can't do it this season, I would look to just butt up right where the community builders do it, so that when their sidewalk is done, this is done. It's concrete work. We're not touching the curb. We're not touching the roadway. So it really could be done as a separate project. I don't think anyone would notice it if it was done as a second, because the concrete can be laid right directly adjacent to it. So if the council would like me to look at doing it this year, I can talk with Louisi and their subcontractor 1 Cent about adding it. But if they can't, due to the scheduling and things like that, this wouldn't be an issue to do in line with when Community Builders is out there.
If I may ask my colleagues, can you give your suggestion, my colleagues? Please unmute yourself.
To give our suggestions about whether the sidewalk should be done over by Jerry Burrell, Mr. Mudavaren?
Yes.
Or in general?
Yes.
So do we know the cost? It seems to me
Well, that's what I'm asking. If the council is okay for Mr. Walling to go ahead and get an estimate of how much it's going to cost us to do the sidewalk adjacent to the park.
yes, because I think that to have just one little piece of the sidewalk not match the other pieces of the sidewalk doesn't seem appropriate. So I would say yes, I'd like to see more information from Mr. Walling.
Would anyone like me to look at 2nd Avenue as well?
So could you describe the relationship between 2nd Avenue and Orchard Park, Mr. Walling, so everyone gets what you're referring to?
I don't know if you can tell, this was what was given out to council, but we did 15 feet, then skipped a house, then did 60 feet. Because we're trying not to do in front of homes. So if you're trying not to create patchwork, this is the road we're gonna go down. That's gonna get really bumpy. So we can do it. I just want to make sure we're all on the same line. If you're saying you don't want to create a spot that doesn't have it, then I think the resident at 2nd Avenue would make an argument that we should do in front of their home as we did on both sides of their home as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Mr. Mudavaren, is this, I'm not even sure whose committee this is.
Go ahead, it's mine. Go ahead, Ms. Karen.
We have a sidewalk program in place. We have the ability to have, people, come forth and do this. And I just feel we're going to be running into more and more issues with doing sidewalks in front of people's homes. We just finished doing Ardsley. We've done DeCamp. There's more people that want to go and have this done. And as we pick and say, oh, the rest of the sidewalks are done, but this is not. I just think we're setting a very, very bad precedent here. I would love all the sidewalks to get done in the city, but unfortunately, the homeowner is responsible for it, and I am, not supportive of starting to do sidewalks in front of homes that, we're going to end up having, more people coming and saying, I need my sidewalk done. You did it over here and you did it over there. And I think we're going down a very slippery slope here.
I think Ms. Porterfield, and I'm not speaking for her, I think what she's trying to say is that the sidewalk that was done on Crane Street was done on private property from the park, the parking lot, to the end of the street. So that's what she's talking about. If we can do the sidewalk on Crane Street, why can't we not do the sidewalk that was left on Schenectady Street adjacent to Jerry Burrell Park? So I think this is public property, not private property.
That's right.
Public property.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. These are projects around public property, and then there's some private property adjacent to it. And in terms of going down a slippery slope, we've already started down that slope by doing Crane Street. And with the sidewalk program, that's if people can afford it. And part of what we did when this sidewalk was already when we were doing it, I went to those particular homeowners and said, we're doing this already. The sidewalk's going to be broken, and here's what it would cost you. And those homeowners said, no, I cannot afford this. So we're talking, first of all, about spending CDBG money. And some of the places that you mentioned before are not CDBG. So we're not really comparing apples and oranges here in terms of the sidewalk program. And if they could have afforded it, they would have. And now we're talking about, as we do this budget, we're talking about a tax increase of 2.82 and a garbage fee increase. So people that already can't afford it in certain neighborhoods are going to be even more hard pressed to be able to afford the sidewalk program. So again, this is around a public project, two projects, well, a public and then a private. But right in smack dab in the middle, there's this piece of sidewalk that's not going to be done. And part of it, by the way, is in front of a city-owned property. So there's a private property on each part in front of a city-owned property. So there's city-owned property. So it's not a multiple. And again, we've done this on Crane Street. And then as we move forward, do we decide when we're doing something around public projects, do we do this? The same thing came up with community builders when they were doing Craig Street, that they stopped right at a house. Fortunately, Metroplex jumped in because I also discussed that. It made no sense and it looked horrible. And Metroplex came in and they completed that sidewalk there because Ray Gillen was there. He took a look and he agreed that, it just doesn't make sense that this looks like this. So again, I think everything is not going to be cut and dry. There are certain cases we're doing this major project. I think we should take the time, the opportunity, look at what's going to cost, realize that some of this is already city property that we're doing in front of, and see if it makes sense and that we can go ahead and do the sidewalks while the work is already being done. Because we've already set the precedent on Crane Street.
So Ms. Porterfield, would you like Mr. Walling to get an estimate what it will cost for the sidewalk around Jerry Borough Park?
Well, in front of those three properties butts up against community builders, yes. The answer is yes. Thank you.
Mr. Wallen, is that something you can do for the council?
Of course, I can have the numbers for you, broken out by property like we've done in the past. And just so it'll be totaled, I know that we're not going to the properties, but just so it kind of looks like what you're used to seeing.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Oh, no problem.
Ms. Porterfield, anything else on this item?
No, thank you very much.
So we can have this back on the agenda in 2 weeks, if you so desire. Ms. Porterfield?
Yes. Yes, and in the meantime, we can, I'll look at the numbers that Mr. Wallen's putting together.
In the meantime, we'll get the numbers from Mr. Wallen.
All right, thank you. Just 1 second, please.
Yeah. The next item will hold for 2 weeks. Ms. Patrick and I are still working on getting information. The next item is discussion, excessive speeding. Ms. Porterfield?
Yes. So I sent, hold on, I'm sorry about that. Here I am. I sent, there, I'm sorry, my video's off. Yes, I wanted us to discuss this. I brought it up before, and I also sent some information to Ms. Maiku, the mayor, and Mr. Mudavaran. We've been having this issue of excessive speeding all over the city. There was an accident recently there was a fatality. And there's also there's also an accident that did not result in a fatality, but was caused due to excessive speed. I ended up actually being there when that accident happened. So, we've had multiple concerns from our residents on the north side, in Mount Pleasant, in Hamilton, all over the city, that people are just going way too fast, coupled with the ATVs on the road, and that's probably another discussion. So I would like for us to consider putting down speed humps, which are different than speed bumps. And the mayor did send me some information that speed bumps are regulated by the highway department. But in that information, he's saying it clearly differentiates between a speed bump and a speed hump. And so for the quick way of saying it, that speed bumps are basically what you see in parking lots, and they're separated by a space between them, and speed humps go all the way across the road and bring your traffic down to about between 20 to 25 miles an hour. So I really think we really need to take a look at this, because I know that, and if the chief is still on the line, that we had some discussion at our last meeting that, in terms of putting traffic officers out and all of that. But we, based on what's been happening, and it's getting progressively worse, really need something that slows our traffic, does some traffic calming. And so, again, I found this information on speed humps, which do not impede your emergency vehicles, and they're better for the road than speed bumps. So I'd like us to consider this, and if we have to do a traffic study, I think you could probably get residents to do that with you based on how fast the traffic's going down some of their streets. But I really think we need to take a look at this and slow down some of this traffic. I'm very concerned that there's going to be a fatality of a pedestrian or another person in another car with the way some of these cars are racing through the neighborhoods. So, and I think that all of you also got the email from the lady, Miss over on the north side. I can't remember her name right now, but over on the north side, Aceto. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Which was signed by Aceto. Okay, which was signed by a number of the neighbors. So obviously, this is concern of our residents, and so we should be trying to do something that that minimizes this problem. So that's what I'd like to bring forth for us to take a look at doing this.
Go ahead, please.
I think this is an interesting thing to bring forward. We hear it going door to door all of the time, particularly with our streets that have been freshly paved. And what I would like to know is, how this works with plowing, and, can we move them around, and cost and all of that. But I think this is a really good discussion to have, even if we could almost deploy them like we deploy our, your speed is right now signs, in areas even temporarily, and move them around so that people think, oh, well, I'm not going to speed down that street because they're there, and maybe they aren't there that day, but they're there the next day, or whatever the case may be. But we hear a loud and clear voice that this is an issue, not just in this city, in every city. So this is, to me, an interesting thing to look into.
So, Mr. Mudavaren?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mudavaren? Yes, so Ms. Barrazo, to your point, I did look at various things, speed bumps also instead of speed humps, but let me just be clear, these are removable. To that, the way they're constructed, as you can see on the end that's on your screen, there's nothing so where you might think it might be open where a pedestrian could like go in and trip on it. It has like a beveled edge where it goes down to the sidewalk. So and it's LEED certified. So yes, they are removable, and it's actually a good idea of moving them around. I hadn't thought of that. But so the things that you bring forward, yes, they can be removed. They do not need to be permanent. So when it comes time for the snow to come, us to have to plow, we remove them, put them back when the weather improves and we're not having snow anymore.
Ms. Porterfield, do you have a cost on these? Is there another attachment?
There is, the cost is, I'm not sure if it's further down, but there is a cost that's attached to the, there's a specification, there is a cost that's, and based on what I looked at, we could, I don't see it here, but based on what I looked at, the city could invest probably about $10,000 and reasonably get a number of these to put around the city. because it wasn't really very, very costly. And if we wanted to look at neighboring towns that happen to have this problem and wanted to, Niskayuna or wherever, that wanted to also be a part of it. But I think that within the city, which is certainly where we have to make sure everything is safe, the city should take a look at this. It's excessive speeding is just really gotten out of hand in the city. So I can send you the numbers.
Yeah, do we still have the, Mr. McCarthy, are you online? Is that something you want to help us with in terms of the council and you working together with this?
So I'm not sure what you're asking me.
In terms of these, well, the council can't just go ahead and buy them. We need your input in terms of if this is something that council would like to proceed. Is that something can we work through you?
Well, I sent Councilmember Porterfield an opinion from the Controller's office where they delineate it's a component of design, drives off the manual for uniform traffic control devices. But there's also, in some of these, you have to make sure you take note where the city would assume liability. So if somebody hits it and they end up in an accident as a result of that, there may be some liability on the city's part. So it depends on where it's going to go. Moving them randomly may create other issues. So again, the whole speeding concept, refer back to the police department for enforcement evaluation so that we can better identify where areas are of the highest concern and then allocate the resources in those areas to deal with it.
Mr. Mudavaran?
Go ahead, please.
I did read through what the mayor sent, and it specifically differentiated between speed bumps and speed humps. It clearly that these are two different things. And when I was looking to do the research, I found that I knew that anyway, but again, in the legislation that you sent me, it clearly said that speed humps are not the same as speed bumps. So they are different. And I understand about deploying the police force. But right now we're in a situation where the police go, when they are dispatched, there are certain calls that, it's priority calls. So a person speeding down your street is not going to necessarily be a priority call when there's a higher priority of shots fired, of, domestics and all these other things. So I don't necessarily know that we would have the resources to do this. And again, I don't want this to end up being a fatality as a result of us just allowing it to continue and not addressing it in any manner. And I know the speed signs are there, but some people go fast to see how fast they're really going with the speed sign showing them. So I really think we need to do something to address this. And I appreciate enforcement, definitely. I just don't see how we have the resources given, all the calls that our officers have. And so I think I would like if our engineering could look into this. Mr. Mayor brought up concerns about the streets and our liability if something. But if we could have our engineer take a look at this, and I will also look and see what other cities are using this. Speed bumps, I've gone over a few, no, but these are supposed to be a little bit better, and I think we should definitely take a look at it.
Well, we'll look at it and try and put a package together for the council.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Mudavaran.
Go ahead, Ms. Palamini.
I obviously, like the rest of you, think this is a very important issue that we need to discuss. I've seen these speed humps before. One of the issues is that I have a concern with is that they tend not to stay in place sometimes. And I could also foresee them getting stolen and taken. So that's something I'd be very interested to see more information about, because I would hate to see us invest money in something that's probably not that might not last. So that would be a component I would like to have more information on. But I also think we need to look into traffic management as in terms of controlling traffic patterns as well as speed patterns with various techniques, whether those are stop signs, maybe even lowering the speed limit within certain confines of neighborhoods so that we can try to address this issue on a more permanent solution.
Mr. Bodevaran?
Go ahead, please.
Yep, thank you, and very good discussion on all these topics this evening. I have not been sleeping here. I've been listening very attentively, so thank you all for every topic. But this is just a perfect spot for to reinstate those speed signs with the cameras that we're talking about for our school zones. We're talking, I believe, about 13, or no, actually there's 21 cameras we're talking about. And utilize those cameras during the school sessions, and then relocating those, which can easily be done into these neighborhoods where the streets have been repaved or where we're getting calls for speeding. And again, they have their cameras with them. They're all equipped with cameras. They have the data in there. And again, as the mayor said, we can really take a look at those zones and target these neighborhoods and streets to really go after it. But I really think that this is a perfect call to bring back those speed signs that we're talking about in the capital project.
Mr. Bujarin?
Go ahead, Ms. President.
It sounds to me like anyone's guess for the perfect fix for this is just that, a guess. So what I would like to see is a pilot program, right? So in one area we do a road with speed humps, in one area we do the camera process, whatever, and then we take the data and move things around or whatever, take the data and figure out what's the best solution. I mean, we're all kind of playing a guessing game, and they're all good ideas, but the proof is in the numbers, right? So I think a couple of pilot programs on this would be helpful in making a future investment. Maybe they get stolen, maybe they don't get stolen. Maybe we move out of place, maybe they don't move out of place. Maybe the speed signs work, maybe they don't do it. So let's gather some data.
Absolutely. I mean, this is very important topics. We have seen an increase in calls with regards to speeding, and those information have been passed on to the police department. So it's something that we need to discuss. It's very important, and we have seen accidents or getting calls about accidents. So I think it's fitting that we discuss it and get some solution to this. Ms. Porterfield, anything else before I move to the next item on this?
No, I thank you for this and for everyone's input, and I will forward more information about the costs, and if we could just, and also as I like Ms. Perazzo's idea of the pilot program, and if we could get Mr. Wallen to weigh in on this. I know we've talked to him before, not necessarily right now, but as we move forward, but because I know we've spoken before about, the speed bumps, and he was saying why we couldn't because of the equipment. But once again, these are removable and not easily removable, so I don't think a person can run down the street with them. But we can look at the weight of them and all of that. So that's what I'll do moving forward, sending that information. Thank you, Mr. Mudavarran.
Thank you. The next item is just a placeholder item from several weeks ago, just so that we can be updated on any additional or new information regarding police reform task force. Mr. Mayor, is there some meetings, or can somebody address that in terms of the meeting schedule and things like that for this week into next week?
I think that's all been sent out. The first one will be Wednesday night, and we'll move forward from there.
Mr. Mudavarran?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Ms. Porterfield.
Mr. Mayor, is there, we had several discussions in terms of the public viewing in this, and I know this one is just a kickoff. So has anything been put out so the general public can at least watch the kickoff and hear it?
I apologize. I don't know the details of the setup of that, but that's going to be the intent. We're going to do these virtually, and that people will be able to view them, and also they'll be indexed and archived so that people could go back and look at them at their leisure. But we'll try to
And,
get all that out. If
oh, okay.
Phil on, he may be more up to date on what the mechanics are on that than I am.
Thank you. And several weeks ago, we had asked about who the people are, that the groups are that are confirmed. And I've not seen that information. Could we find out the groups that are confirmed that will be participating in this process?
Sure, we can get that out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other business for public safety? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open the Health and Recreation Committee meeting, and the item on the agenda is back to the Rose Garden permit fee. The volunteers provided us with some information. So Mr. Palmeni, would you like to address that?
Sure, thank you. You should have all gotten this in your packets. The few weeks ago, if you recall, we were discussing with the Rose Garden Committee a permit fee for photographers, professional photographers. And in the process, we got to discussion of how much a permit fee should be. Ms. Patrick and myself, we were communicating with the Rose Garden Committee. We obtained a variety of information from a number of rose gardens around the country. They basically wanted to see what we had. We were still collecting more information. Asked that we stop since we had quite a bit. And they were going to have a meeting and wanted to discuss it amongst themselves. So they had the information that you're seeing on your screen, and they had their meeting, and they communicated with both Ms. Patrick and I that the permit fee in their minds should be $75 to $100. So that is the information that we're bringing back to the council, and see if perhaps we can figure out what we would like to do as far as a permit fee to move forward.
Thank you. Are there questions from council members or comments?
Ms. Patrick?
Yes, Ms. Porterfield.
So the fee that you're considering, $75 to $100, is that for the entire season, for the year rather?
It is.
Thank you.
It's the recommendation of the volunteer group.
So at the beginning of the year, then the person would apply for a permit, and then they'd be able to use it throughout the year.
I think that it doesn't necessarily mean just at the beginning of the year, but probably
Okay.
at the beginning of their wanting to use the park as.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I would ask Ms. Maiku if when somebody gets a permit, probably the day of the permit into a year, but I'm not sure about that. Other comments?
Yeah, Ms. Patrick, Mr. Palmeni, or one of the two. I'm reading, it says per season, so I'm assuming their per season is when the rose garden is actually in operation and in bloom or whatever effect. But John or Carmen, do they have any idea of how many professional photographers we're talking about here? I mean, they raised what, $1,500 in 2019, and I guess they did 2,500 this year, or 2,300. I didn't want to look back. How many? Do they have an idea of what they're thinking fee wise that they're going to collect on this?
No, they didn't really get into that with us. They just said it's become a fairly big problem the past year and a half, and that they're not really looking to punish people or necessarily even raise funds. It's just something that they can use to address professional photographers when they're there to keep them in line, so to speak. I mean, the big piece that they're looking for is signage, which they're in communications with the mayor's office and representatives, but also they're very interested in getting the code of conduct approved and going, so that they have just a little bit of teeth. So when they're there as volunteers and they see a professional photographer, basically, for lack of a better word, pushing aside somebody so they can get a picture, that they can address it.
All right.
Mr. Kosher, I think that when they did present with us, they indicated that it was pretty frequently during the week that the volunteers are seeing, at least in the high season of the Rose Garden, that they're seeing the photographers there. I think it was several times a week that they are noting that there's professional photographers in the park. But we can get information.
Yeah, and then the other thing we really have to work on to everybody is how is this permit going to be executed? What's going to be the availability for these individuals to get it? Quite honestly, our folks over there at Foster Avenue, you can't even find the entrance half the time. And who's going to issue this permit? Is it going to be Samantha's office or whatever? So I think those little details have to be worked out as well. But again, look at whatever we can do to support the Rose Garden group. They're a tremendous group of volunteers, and we appreciate their efforts. So however we need to support them, I would certainly be willing to do that. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
So, Ms. Patrick,
Yes.
so we're moving here? Are we moving to for a range of amount of $75 to $100, or are we just saying it's $100 per season?
I mean, I think that I personally would like us to come up with one fee that it would be. Mr. Palmeni, did you have thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. One fee makes it much more simpler.
Yes. And that was the reason why I asked the question. So we need to simplify it. If we can do 75 or 100, so that make it easy for the person who is doing the permit.
So I just want to ask a question, Ms. Patrick.
Yes.
So, for instance, if someone comes and they're getting married, so they're, so, and that's the one and only time they're going to have that professional photographer there. So is that considered part of this? Is that something separate that the weddings are doing something already? How does that work?
It would be the professional photographer that has the permit, so not the couple.
Right.
But there's also a separate thing in terms of a wedding fee. So if you're having a wedding, the Rose Garden Committee answered this previously. If you're having a wedding there, you get the permit for the wedding. And of course, the pictures are part of that.
So it covers it. And so what you're saying is that it covers it and the photographer would not have to get a separate permit to photograph at that wedding.
Correct. They're more interested in the people going during the week and having a family photo shoot or some other sort of photo shoot that's happening fairly regularly at this point.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure we were clear that there's not another separate fee for weddings and all that stuff. Thank you.
Let's be clear. We're only talking professional photographers here, right? We're not talking about a family photo shoot.
Correct.
The Kosher family wants to set up and take a shot.
Right. It's professional photographers.
Be clear. All right. And same with proms. Our proms are going to be exempt. Those folks as well. Correct.
But if you hire a professional photographer, Mr. Kosher, to take your family picture, you got to pay.
Exactly.
Well, let me tell you what.
But it's not the person. Can I just clarify for a second?
Go ahead. Now we're getting ridiculous.
It's the photographer that has to pay. So I guess I would have to disagree a little bit with Mr. Palmeni, because I think on the one hand, the couple would get the permit to use the Rose Garden for their wedding, but if they hire a professional photographer, that photographer would still need to have a permit. At least that's my understanding. That would be separate.
All right, I guess we're going to have to go back to because that's not how I understood it.
Okay.
I'm very certain that Rose Garden Committee had said that there is a fee for a wedding and that the photos were part of that. So
Okay.
we will go back with any questions. We'll get that information and we will bring it forward.
Okay, Ms. Perazzo?
Thank you. We might just consider a day permit versus an annual permit. You know, so for professional photographers, if they know they're only going to be a one-shot deal in the, you know, whatever, they get a day permit. Otherwise, they get a season permit. It's really as simple as that.
Well, I brought that up when they first approached us a few weeks back, and they felt that that would really add a lot of administrative pieces to what I would think would be in the city clerk's office. I think that's who does issue all of our permits, but I'm not sure. I mean, we have to work out those details. But I actually had suggested the same thing, Ms. Perazzo, but in thinking about what they were saying back to me, it did seem like logistically it would be really time consuming if we were having people get day by day by day. Some of the photographers I think are there every week. But these are all things we have to work out.
My point is that a photographer that's there week by week by week is going to go for an annual permit because it's going to be much more cost effective for them. So you make a day permit for $20 because somebody knows they're only going to be there one day, or you make a season permit for 100 and they know they're going to be there for 20 weeks of the season. So that's it. I'm not saying only do a day permit where somebody has to come in every time they go in, but for single use people, they're going to take that less expensive option. Just throwing that out there.
Okay,
That's good because we're gonna basically this first discussion, and we'll gather all the questions. We'll go back to the committee and work with them, and hopefully bring something. Now that we have more of these questions, get them to address them and move forward. So let's.
So if anybody
we
has
should just table it.
Yeah, and if anybody has additional questions in the meantime, I would say please send them to John or Mr. Palomini or myself, and we.
Patrick, can we have that committee come to our meetings there? Instead of just the two of you meeting with these folks, my goodness, let's invite them again.
We will. They've been to the meetings twice before already, so we will. They've come to our committee meetings. So we'll invite them again. Any other comments? Okay, motion to adjourn Health and Recreation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Administrative efficiency, one item on the agenda, update on the city council's page on our website. Mr. Monivera and then Ms. Michael, please.
Thank you, sir. This item here, we are bringing it just to update the public and the council with regards to as we continue to meet online. We are doing some changes to the website to bring to better provide the information out to the public. And there were some recent change from Ms. Michael and staff. So I will ask Ms. Michael to walk us through the changes that was made.
Good evening,
And if you can share your screen, please take the screen and share it.
Okay. It's not allowing me to share the screen.
Oh, we got a little mark. Got lots of your marks.
Not sure what that is.
I think my granddaughter might be on this whiteboard here, drawing for us. Oh dear.
John, are you able to pull up the website at all?
Ms. Michael, you mind making back out and I have this page up. I can try to share it.
Just click on the happy face.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's making those pictures there.
You're hacked.
Everybody's welcome.
I think it's the mayor.
Are you able to see my screen there?
Yep,
Yes, we got you.
So the updated webpage is a collaborative effort between the council, the public, myself, and my deputy city clerk, Marielle Schmidt, and our IT team. Most of the updates were to the city council page because we'd like to make public engagement simpler. I started with the privilege of the floor form. So if you go into privilege of the floor there, John, all you would have to do is sign in. Are you able to sign in?
No.
No. Okay, so.
We'll just speak in general of the options that is available.
So you would sign in, you would be able to send us comments or sign in to register to speak at a public hearing or the legislative agenda or for city business. And it's pretty simple. It's explained on the form. Now let me introduce you to my very talented deputy, Marielle Schmidt. She has prior experience creating web pages, and I'm thrilled with the updates that we've worked on. Marielle, are you on?
Yes, I am. So my name is Marielle Schmidt. I'm the new deputy city clerk for the city of Schenectady. And the changes that Samantha Michael, the city clerk, and I have been able to make in collaboration with the IT department and some various other departments as it relates to the city clerk's office page, where we have made some updates to the forms for the public when they're requesting vital records. So we've included information pages, which allows it to be, which makes it easier for the public to submit their request and also allows them to provide them with all the information they need in order to have their request processed as quickly as possible. As Ms. Maiku mentioned, we updated the privilege of the floor form. We were able to do this because there were some changes made to WebEx, which allows the public to now partake in the meetings where it is possible, and now they're also able to speak. So we've updated the form. We're currently pulling up the form so that you see that there is the option to submit a comment, but also an option to say that you would like to speak at the meeting. Oh, it seems that we're having some difficulties. Then in addition to that, you will see that there were 3 orange squares, and each square allows the public to be able to access either the teleconference, or it allows them to view the open stage media, or it allows them to view, to go into the privilege of the floor form and put in their request to speak or to submit a comment. And we are very proud of the work we've done so far. We are very happy to hear that the public has also received these changes positively. We've received a lot of positive feedback. And yeah, I'm looking forward to be of service to the public and the city council. And I thank you for your time.
Very good. And Marielle, actually, when I did click on the view in the meeting, YouTube, it was excellent. It was right up to date. Sound was working. The quality video was working. So very big improvements, because I know that's been some of our concerns from some of our folks when they try to view it, whether the video or the audio is out. But again, I was chiming in today, and excellent work. And welcome aboard and congratulations on being our deputy. I haven't met you yet, but great work. Thank you very much. Anything else, Mr. Motivaran or Sam?
No, I just want to commend both of them for taking the effort to update this link to our website so that we can able to provide the information out to the public. It's something that we intend to work on to continue to update it and to make it user friendly to the public. So this is ongoing. We intend to have more updates.
Yeah, Mr. Motivaran and my colleagues, I mean, it might be a nice idea for us when we do our emails to put this link on the bottom of our emails with our signature, so they have a direct link right to this page. Just a thought for many of us who do send emails out. Just put this that little web link there, and so folks can directly connect and contact with us. Any questions? Any other comments from my colleagues here?
Actually, Mr. Kosher?
Yes, ma'am.
That is actually a really, really good idea to have the link on the bottom of our emails. I will be doing that, so appreciate the suggestion.
Very good. I'm 2 for 2. There you go.
Mr. Kosher?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to commend the city clerk and the deputy city clerk for this work to make it so much easier, especially since we're being so very virtual these days. This just makes it much more user-friendly for our public. And so, as they've already stated, it's very much appreciated. So and I'd like to also add my appreciation to that, to getting it done, because we definitely hear when it's not going well. So it's good to hear when it's going well.
And our IT folks as well. Our IT folks, don't forget our IT people.
Let's not forget them.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn on this committee.
So moved. Motion.
Second.
Oh, we're adjourned. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to open up city development and planning, and the first item on the agenda, I believe, is Mr. Wallen with a, I don't even know what it is.
Revocable permit.
Revocable permit. Mr. Wallen, you have the floor, please. Thank you.
Yep, what we have is a revocable permit for the Creighton shop. It is a shop taking over the former Cat's Cafe on Pedestrian J Street. I believe they are like a tea shop of some kind. I don't know about drinking it, but I think you can buy it there. I was talking with Christine. It's a typical sign that you would see on Pedestrian J. It's been approved by planning and it's here for a permit.
Perfect. Any questions?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. Moving right along, I think the next item is amending Chapter 167 of the Administrative Code, and that would be Mr. Colden.
Thank you very much, Ms. Liskey-Welzunis. The law department has been working with the building department, development department, and the mayor's office, along with discussions with outside counsel on legal recommendations to change section 167 of the city code that is related to the vacant building registration. Essentially, the changes that we're seeking to make come based on experience dealing with the code out of the law department, and also the practical issues that the building department and development department have seen. We're looking to essentially better address those issues to determine who's required to register a vacant building, when a vacant building is required to be registered, and what is exactly required for registration purposes. Since this is a change to the city code, we're looking to for the committee to pass the legislative request for a call for a public hearing in order for the public to review the proposed changes and provide feedback to those changes. We heard back today from our outside counsel with some final suggestions and clarification points. We plan to send out the proposed changes to the city council as soon as we go through all those changes and recommendations prior to even the public or the call for the public hearing at the next council meeting, just so that we can get your feedback, obviously. So that's where we stand on that.
So you're looking for the council's feedback, and then we're going to call for a public hearing, correct?
So we're looking for the legislative request to call for a public hearing. That would be at the next council meeting, but obviously we want the council to review and the changes, ask their questions, provide their suggestions in terms of modifying any language. Obviously we want your input.
So, Mr. Colden, what was the what's the goal of this?
The goal of changing the code is just essentially to have a better understanding from the building department, development department, law department, in order to provide predictable results. I think at times right now the language has some subjectivity to it that we're trying to get rid of, so that code enforcement, when they go out to evaluate a property, they can affirmatively say that a property is vacant under our code. If somebody does not register that property, then we're also providing it obviously to the property owners so that they know if they have to register the property, and if they don't, it provides predictable results for the law department if we bring charges and prosecute somebody for failing to register the property.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I just need a clarification from Mr. Colden. Mr. Colden, did you say that this was for a call for a public hearing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Lewinsky-Waltz-Smith?
Yes, go ahead, Ms.
Mr. Colden, can you just re-clarify? So we are going to see the proposed changes?
We're going to get to you as soon as we can. As I said, our outside counsel today sent us some final feedback and recommendations. I know Mr. Epstein has been working with outside counsel primarily on this. So he's reviewing those changes. I'm going to take a look at those changes as well. Once we have a pretty solid, essentially finalized language in terms of the draft that we want to present for the public hearing, we're going to send it out to the council, obviously in advance of the public hearing. I would like to get it to you, prior to even the council meeting next week, where you'd presumably be passing a resolution to call for a public hearing. I want to get it to you as soon as we can, in other words.
Okay.
Ms. Karen?
Yes, Mr. Mudavaren.
Yeah, Mr. Colin, so the registration that we're doing currently is affecting us from registering this building and prosecuting the people who are not registering?
I think, Mr. Mudavaren, I think what we're looking to do is provide a more definitive way of addressing the issues. I think the way the language now in the code, I think it works, but I think it could work better. I think it's a question of efficiency. We've had certain instances where there have been questions from the building department about whether or not perhaps a property is vacant under our code. There have been questions from Mr. Epstein, because he's the one now who's receiving the applications to register a property. And there have been issues that we've had in prosecuting cases at times, just because I think sometimes it's questionable whether or not a property is technically vacant under our code. I think what we're looking to do, though, is provide something much more definitive for predictable results for everybody, including the people of Schenectady who have to register the properties.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Colden. We'll look forward to seeing what the changes are, hopefully before the end of the week. That would be fantastic.
Do we need a motion to call for public hearing?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Ms. Perazzo.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I believe the next item on the agenda is the transfer of 1058 Crane Street to the Land Revitalization Corporation of the Capital Region. Mr. Gray, are you on?
I am.
All
Good
right.
evening again.
Good evening.
This is just a legislative request to request the transfer of 1058 Crane Street to the Capital Region Land Bank. This property was included in a cooperation agreement with the land bank, and we're requesting the transfer to them to continue the revitalization of the Crane Street corridor.
Are there any questions?
I'll move it.
Oh, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then I have, the next item is transfer to three, I'm sorry, I can't really read this, it's so small. Transfer of 332 Abbotsford Road Land Trust to GSC Properties. And Mr. Colden, you have the floor.
Thank you. I request that this be discussed in executive session, since it has to do with the transfer of property and technically sale of property. So it would fall in line with the other property sales.
Okay, so then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. So moved?
So moved. I need a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I'll see you in executive session.